them that I never opened. My sister had used my social security number to open 3 cards and max them all out. She'd done the same thing to our mom for another $20,000 in fraudulent charges. The detective said identity theft charges would be added to everything else she was facing. We had to file police reports and freeze our credit while dealing with everything else falling apart. 3 days later, Becca Torres went into labor and delivered a healthy baby girl at the hospital. Security guards stayed outside her room the whole time, and Lila Baldwin from social services was there too. My sister had been right about one thing, which was that Becca didn't have any family support, but now she had Lila helping her apply for housing assistance and figure out how to be a mom. There's something deeply unsettling about how calculating the sister was with all those notebooks tracking that poor girl's bathroom schedule and lunch choices. Makes me wonder what else she might have been planning that they haven't found yet in her apartment. The baby was perfect and safe, and my sister was sitting in jail where she couldn't hurt anyone. We thought that would be the end of it, but my sister's lawyer said she wanted to go to trial. She was planning to argue that she was doing a public service by taking the baby from an unfit mother. The prosecutor showed up at our house 2 days later with a stack of papers thick as a phone book. She laid out all the charges against my sister one by one on our kitchen table. Attempted kidnapping of a minor's child carried the most time, then fraud, identity theft, and stalking charges added more years. My husband sat across from her with his own smaller stack of papers for his assault charge. Our lawyer kept saying it was the best outcome we could hope for given what my husband did. The prosecutor agreed to reduce it to misdemeanor assault if he pleaded guilty, and accepted whatever punishment the judge gave. My dad called me that night from the emergency room because his chest hurt and he couldn't breathe right. The doctor said it was a minor heart episode brought on by stress and kept him overnight for observation. He kept asking the nurses how he missed all the signs that his daughter could do something this terrible. Mom sat beside his hospital bed crying and holding his hand while machines beeped around them. My sister's ex-boyfriend called me the next morning asking if I could come to their apartment. He'd been packing up her things and found 3 more fake pregnancy bellies in their bedroom closet. They were different sizes labeled 6 months, 7 months, and 8 months in her handwriting. The receipts showed she'd been buying them for over a year, practicing how to wear them right. He showed me videos on her phone of her trying different walks and poses in their bathroom mirror. There were notes about which clothes hid the straps best and how to sit, so the foam looked natural. My grandmother hadn't left her room in 3 days and wouldn't answer when we knocked. Mom finally used her spare key and found her sitting in the dark staring at nothing. She'd given my sister $5,000 for prenatal vitamins and medical expenses over the past months. The shame of being fooled by her own granddaughter was eating her alive from the inside. Our lawyer called with more bad news about what he'd found digging into my sister's online activity. She'd joined 12 different pregnancy forums under fake names over the past 2 years. Each account had stolen ultrasound photos from real pregnant women that she'd edited with her information. She'd copied other women's pregnancy stories word for word and posted them as her own experiences. The lawyer printed out hundreds of pages showing how she'd studied real pregnancies to make her lie perfect. 2 weeks later, my husband stood in front of the judge and pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault. The judge looked at all the evidence about why he punched my sister, but said violence is never acceptable. She sentenced him to anger management classes every week for 6 months and 100 hours of community service. My husband nodded and signed the papers without arguing because he knew he was lucky not to get jail time. I went to the courthouse 3 weeks after that for a hearing about my sister's case. Becca Torres was there too with her newborn daughter sleeping in a carrier against her chest. She looked so young sitting on that bench, maybe 17 at most, with dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, she walked over and thanked me for stopping my sister from stealing her baby. Her voice shook when she talked about how scared she was to testify, but she wanted justice. The baby made little noises, and Becca adjusted the blanket around her tiny face with gentle hands. I could see why my sister targeted her because she was alone with no family in the courtroom. But she had Lila Baldwin now, the social worker assigned to help her figure out being a mom. The psychiatrist's report about my sister came in the mail 2 days before her next hearing. It said she had something called pseudopsoriasis delusion disorder, combined with antisocial behavior patterns. The doctor wrote that my sister genuinely believed she deserved a baby more than unfit mothers. She saw teenage moms and women struggling with addiction as unworthy of their children. The report went on for 20 pages about how her mind justified planning to steal Becca's baby. It made me sick reading how she'd convinced herself she was doing something noble and right. Mom and dad hired a financial advisor to figure out how much money my sister had stolen from everyone. The total came to almost $50,000 when they added up all the credit card fraud. They started selling things and pulling from their retirement savings to pay family members back. Dad couldn't look anyone in the eye at family dinners and kept apologizing for raising someone who could do this. The shame was destroying him worse than the heart problems because he felt responsible for not seeing it. 3 weeks after her arrest, my sister sent me a letter from jail written on yellow legal paper. She said I betrayed her and she would never forgive me for ruining her life. The whole letter blamed everyone else for not understanding that Becca didn't deserve her baby. She wrote that teenagers who get pregnant are selfish and irresponsible and don't deserve to be mothers. She said she would have given that baby a perfect life with 2 parents and a nice house. The last line said she was doing the right thing and we were all too stupid to see it. I threw the letter in the trash and tried to forget about it, but 2 days later my husband had to start his community service at the youth center downtown. The judge made him do 100 hours teaching kids about handling anger, which felt weird since he'd punched my sister. He walked into that first session with 12 middle schoolers staring at him and started telling them our whole story about the baby shower. The kids sat there with their mouths open while he explained how he'd followed my sister and discovered her plan to steal a baby. He showed them how anger can protect people sometimes, but violence always has consequences even when you're right. One kid asked if he regretted hitting her, and my husband said no about stopping the kidnapping, but yes about using his fists. The program coordinator watched from the back and nodded when my husband talked about finding better ways to handle dangerous situations. After 3 weeks of sessions, the kids started opening up about their own anger problems, and my husband actually got good at helping them. Then Becca called me crying because some guy showed up at her apartment claiming to be her brother. She said his name was Cade, and he'd been gone for 4 years because of drugs, but saw the news story about my sister trying to steal her baby. He stood outside her door with flowers and a stuffed animal for the baby, saying he wanted to make things right. Becca didn't trust him at first, but Lila, the social worker, ran a background check and found out he'd been clean for 2 years. Cade had a job at a warehouse and his own apartment, and kept showing up with diapers and formula until Becca finally let him meet his niece. Meanwhile, our whole family started going to therapy together, except for my sister, who was still in jail. The therapist made us sit in a circle and talk about how we felt betrayed by someone we'd we'd known our whole lives. Mom cried every session about missing the warning signs, and Dad kept blaming himself for raising her wrong. The therapist kept saying we were all victims of my sister's lies and manipulation and shouldn't blame ourselves. She said people with my sister's condition are experts at hiding their true selves and fooling everyone around them. We spent 6 sessions just processing the shock of finding out someone we loved could plan something so evil. Then my sister's ex-boyfriend filed a lawsuit against her for emotional distress and fraud. His lawyer sent us papers showing my sister had been taking hormones to make her breasts leak milk and cause mood swings. She'd spent $8,000 of his money on baby stuff and made him tell his whole family about the pregnancy. He wanted damages for the therapy he needed and the money he'd lost preparing for a fake baby. The lawyer said he had a strong case since my sister admitted in jail phone calls that she'd been faking everything. 2 months after the arrest, I had to go to the courthouse and testify before a grand jury. They made me tell the whole story about the baby shower from the beginning while 23 people stared at me. When I got to the part about feeling the foam belly dent under my hands, I started shaking and had to drink water. The prosecutor showed them photos of the fake belly and the receipts for all the different sizes she'd bought online. I testified for 3 hours about everything I'd seen and heard that day, and how my sister's face changed when we caught her. The grand jury took less than an hour to indict her on all charges, including attempted kidnapping and fraud. Meanwhile, Lila kept working with Becca to get her life together with a new baby. She helped Becca fill out applications for housing assistance and signed her up for job training at the community college. Becca wanted to be a dental assistant, so she could support her daughter without depending on anyone. Lila took her to the WIC office for formula vouchers and helped her apply for childcare assistance so she could attend classes. Cade started watching the baby while Becca went to appointments, and slowly they built trust between them. But things at home got harder because I couldn't stop thinking about my husband hitting my sister. Even though he'd saved that baby, I kept seeing him pull back his fist and punch her stomach. We'd be eating dinner and I'd remember the sound of his fist hitting the foam and feel sick. I'm trying to understand how the sister's mind worked. She actually took hormones to make her body produce milk? That's such a strange mix of planning and delusion. He noticed me flinching when he moved too fast and finally said we needed help. We found a couples counselor who specialized in trauma and started going every week to work through it. The counselor said my brain was stuck between gratitude and horror, which was normal for such a complicated situation. Then the news coverage brought out more victims we didn't know about. 3 different women called the prosecutor saying my sister had stalked them during their pregnancies too. One woman said my sister showed up at her prenatal appointments asking weird questions about the baby's health. Another said my sister followed her to the parking garage after a birthing class and tried to get her phone number. The third woman had screenshots of my sister joining her pregnancy Facebook group under a fake name and asking for her address. My uncle hired his own lawyer to file a civil lawsuit trying to get back the $30,000 my sister stole. The lawyer said criminal restitution would take years, but civil court could move faster if we had good evidence. He started collecting receipts and bank statements from everyone who'd given my sister money for fake medical bills. The total kept growing as more relatives remembered giving her cash for prescriptions and doctor visits that never happened. Then my sister did something nobody expected and fired her public defender. She stood up in court and told the judge she wanted to represent herself because everyone was against her. She said the public defender was part of a conspiracy to make her look crazy when she was actually trying to save a baby. The judge ordered another psychiatric evaluation to figure out if she was competent enough to make that decision. The psychiatrist spent 4 hours with my sister over 2 days and watched every recording from the jail visits we'd made. Mom had her first panic attack at the grocery store 3 weeks later when a woman she didn't know walked up asking if she was the mother from the news story about the fake pregnancy. Mom dropped her basket and ran to the car where she sat shaking for 20 minutes before she could drive home. Dad found her that night sitting in the dark kitchen crying about how she couldn't face people anymore. The doctor prescribed anxiety medication the next day after Mom described waking up at 3 a.m. with her heart racing and feeling like she couldn't breathe. She started taking the pills, but they made her tired all the time, and she stopped going to her book club and yoga class. Meanwhile, Lila Baldwin kept meeting with Becca and her brother Cade, who'd shown up after seeing the news coverage. Cade had been clean for 2 years and worked construction, but wanted to help his sister after missing so much of her life. Lila introduced him to her husband Ramon, who ran a security company and needed reliable workers for overnight shifts at the office buildings. Cade took the job and moved into a small apartment near Becca, so he could watch the baby while she went to appointments. My husband hit the halfway mark of his 100 community service hours and came home talking about this kid named Isaac, who reminded him of himself at that age. The youth center had him teaching basic self-defense, but mostly he just listened to the kids talk about their problems at home. The anger management instructor noticed my husband was different too and started having him help with the newer participants who were still in the angry phase. The second psychiatric evaluation results came back saying my sister was competent to stand trial, but had something called narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features. The psychiatrist wrote that she understood right from wrong, but believed her desires were more important than other people's rights. She recommended at least 5 years of intensive therapy, whether my sister went to prison or not. Dad went back to work after taking 2 weeks off, but came home early his first day saying he couldn't handle the looks from his coworkers. His boss suggested he take early retirement with full benefits since he'd been there 28 years, and Dad started seriously considering it. That weekend I was cleaning out the garage and found a box of my sister's stuff from when she'd stayed with us last year. Inside were printed articles about international adoption and babies being sold to wealthy couples for $50,000 or more. There were notes in her handwriting about how to forge adoption papers and which countries had the least oversight. She'd bookmarked stories about people getting caught and highlighted what mistakes they'd made. The prosecutor added it to the evidence file and said it showed premeditation and that the kidnapping could have led to human trafficking. My husband's anger management instructor was this older guy named Frank, who'd been a Marine and then a cop before becoming a counselor. Frank started meeting with my husband one-on-one after the group sessions to talk about the difference between protecting people and attacking them. He made my husband write out what he was feeling in the moment before he punched my sister and what other options he could have chosen. They worked through scenarios where my husband had to practice de-escalation techniques even when he knew someone was doing something wrong. The prosecutor called me 2 months after the arrest to discuss a plea deal they were offering my sister. 15 years with the possibility of parole after 7 if she completed psychiatric treatment and showed genuine remorse. The alternative was going to trial where she could get 25 to life if the jury convicted her on all charges including attempted kidnapping of a minor. Becca got accepted into a GED program for young mothers that included free childcare during during classes. The program met 3 nights a week and Saturday mornings at the community college. Cade adjusted his work schedule so he could watch the baby while Becca was in class, and Lila helped him set up a routine. Becca was determined to finish her GED and then start the dental assistant program the following year. The baby was healthy and hitting all her milestones, and Becca sent us a picture of her smiling for the first time. My sister's lawyer presented the plea deal during a video call from jail, but my sister started yelling before he even finished explaining it. She said she wasn't taking any deal because she hadn't done anything wrong, and the jury would understand she was trying to save a baby from an unfit teenage mother. Her lawyer tried to explain that the evidence was overwhelming, but she fired him on the spot and said she'd find someone who actually believed in her case. The judge appointed another public defender, but my sister refused to meet with them and filed paperwork to represent herself again. The guards reported she wasn't taking the medication they'd prescribed for her anxiety and was spending all her time in the law library researching cases where people beat kidnapping charges. She wrote letters to anyone who would listen, claiming she was persecuted for trying to help a baby have a better life. The family therapist made us sit in a circle every Tuesday afternoon in her office that smelled like vanilla candles and old books. She pulled out this timeline on a big whiteboard and started marking dates when my sister had lied about things we'd forgotten. There was the time 5 years ago when she said she had cancer, and we all shaved our heads in support until Dad found out she'd never been to the oncologist she named. The therapist kept adding more lies to the board, like when my sister claimed she was accepted to nursing school but was actually working at a gas station. Mom cried through most of these sessions, remembering how my sister would stare at pregnant women in stores and ask to touch their bellies. The therapist said we'd all been in denial about my sister's problems because facing them meant admitting someone we loved was capable of terrible things. My husband finished his last day of community service at the youth center on a Thursday, and the kids threw him a little party with cupcakes they'd made. One boy named Isaac handed him this letter he'd written about how my husband's story helped him understand why he gets so mad sometimes. The letter said Isaac was learning to count to 10 and walk away instead of hitting when he got angry at his stepdad. 3 other kids wrote notes too, and my husband kept them all in his wallet. The youth center director asked if my husband would come back as a volunteer coach for their basketball team. The prosecutor called us into her office downtown, where the walls were covered with law degrees and photos of her kids. She spread out all the case files on this huge conference table and explained the trial would start in 3 months. My sister was planning to represent herself and argue she was performing a public service by targeting what she called an unfit teenage mother. The prosecutor showed us motions my sister had filed claiming Becca was on drugs, even though all the drug tests came back clean. She warned us my sister would try to make herself look like a hero who was saving a baby from neglect. Mom and Dad met with a real estate agent about their vacation home in the mountains where we used to spend every Christmas. They'd bought it 20 years ago and fixed it up themselves, but now they needed the money to pay back everyone my sister had scammed. Uncle got $1,500 back, and my aunts each got their money too. Grandmother refused to take anything, saying she didn't want their money, just wanted them to heal. The house sold in 2 weeks to a young family with 3 kids. I was picking out apples at the grocery store when I heard a baby crying and turned to see Becca pushing a cart with her daughter in the carrier. Cade was with them comparing formula prices on his phone. The baby had these chubby cheeks and was wearing a pink onesie that said Mommy's Girl on it. The way they're digging up all these old lies from 5 years ago makes me wonder if everyone just chose to look the other way back then. That cancer story where they all shaved their heads, how did nobody question that until Dad checked? Becca looked tired with dark circles under her eyes, but she was smiling at her baby and making silly faces to stop the crying. She saw me and froze for a second before Cade put his hand on her shoulder and whispered something. We talked for a few minutes about how the baby was sleeping through the night now, and Becca was taking her GED classes online. The baby grabbed my finger when I reached out and had the strongest grip for someone so small. Letters started arriving at everyone's houses with my sister's jail number as the return address. She wrote to our aunt saying I was jealous of her and had turned my husband against her. She told our cousins that my husband was violent and dangerous, and they should keep their kids away from him. Most of the family threw the letters away or sent them back unopened, but Dad's brother called asking if maybe we had overreacted. Mom had to show him all the evidence again, including the receipts for the fake bellies and the stalking videos. My sister even wrote to our old neighbors saying she was wrongly imprisoned for caring too much about children's welfare. The prosecutor got recordings of my sister's phone calls from jail through a court order. We sat in her office listening to my sister tell another inmate how she was going to get her baby as soon as she got out. She described Becca as a worthless addict who didn't deserve to be a mother, even though Becca had never touched drugs in her life. In one call, my sister said she knew where Becca lived now and would wait as long as it took. The prosecutor said these calls proved my sister was still dangerous and would use them at trial to show she had no remorse. My sister had drawn pictures of babies in her cell that guards found during a search. My husband and I drove around looking at houses in different neighborhoods every weekend for a month. Our house had reporters showing up asking for interviews and people slowing down to take pictures of where the baby shower happened. The neighbors were polite, but we could tell they were uncomfortable around us now. We found a place 40 minutes away in a quiet suburb where nobody knew our names. The moving truck came on a Saturday and we packed everything while trying not to look at the backyard where the gift table used to be. Grandmother finally agreed to give a statement to the prosecutor after staying silent for months. She was too weak to come to court, so they set up a video call from her living room. She sat in her favorite chair wearing her good dress and told the prosecutor about giving my sister $5,000 for prenatal vitamins and maternity clothes. Her hands shook as she showed bank statements and canceled checks. She said my sister had come to her house crying about medical bills and needing help to give her baby the best start in life. When the prosecutor asked if she wanted the money back, Grandmother said she just wanted my sister to get help and never hurt another family. Becca brought her baby to the prosecutor's office for a meeting about the trial, and I was there too. The baby was 6 months old and could sit up by herself and was starting to eat mashed bananas and sweet potatoes. Lila came with them and told us Becca hadn't missed a single parenting class or pediatrician appointment. The baby was in the perfect weight range and had rolled over early and was already trying to crawl. Lila said in her 20 years as a social worker she'd rarely seen such a devoted young mother. Becca was studying for her GED test every night after the baby went to sleep, and Cade was working overtime to pay for daycare. The prosecutor took pictures of the healthy, happy baby to show the jury what my sister had tried to steal. 3 months later, I walked into the courthouse for jury selection and saw my sister for the first time since her arrest. She'd lost at least 30 pounds, and her cheekbones stuck out sharp under pale skin that looked like paper. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on her frame, and her hair was flat against her head instead of the perfect curls she always had. She kept telling her lawyer she she didn't need to be there, and the judge made her sit down 4 times before threatening to have her gagged. The prosecutor asked potential jurors if they could be fair to someone accused of planning to kidnap a baby. My sister kept shaking her head and mouthing the word no every time someone said they could be impartial. We picked 12 jurors and 2 alternates by lunch, and my sister told the judge they were all stupid. The next morning, opening statement started, and my sister interrupted the prosecutor 6 times in the first 10 minutes. She stood up saying the prosecutor didn't understand that she was helping society by taking a baby from an unfit mother. The judge warned her twice, then said one more outburst would mean contempt charges and removal from the courtroom. My sister sat back down but kept making faces and shaking her head while the prosecutor showed the jury photos of the fake bellies and the stalking videos. When her lawyer gave his opening statement, my sister kept trying to grab the microphone from him. 2 days later, I took the witness stand at 8 in the morning and didn't leave until after 2 in the afternoon. The prosecutor walked me through finding the foam belly at the baby shower and discovering all the evidence my husband had collected. I described pressing my hands into the dented foam where my nephew should have been, and hearing my sister admit she thought the teenager didn't deserve her baby. My sister stared at me the entire 6 hours without blinking or looking away once. Her lawyer asked me if I'd ever seen signs of mental illness before, and I had to say no, even though looking back there were probably things we missed. The prosecutor showed the jury the receipts for the fake bellies and the screenshots of my sister following Becca at the hospital. I identified my sister's handwriting on the notes about Becca's schedule and confirmed the credit card she'd opened in my name. When I finally stepped down, my legs were shaking so bad I almost fell. The next morning, Becca took the stand holding her baby who was almost 9 months old now. She described meeting my sister at the teen pregnancy support group and how my sister always sat next to her and asked personal questions. Becca's voice broke when she talked about finding out someone was planning to steal her baby the day she gave birth. She said she hadn't slept right for months and still checked the locks 5 times before bed. 3 jurors were wiping their eyes when Becca described being 17 and alone and thinking my sister was being kind when really she was hunting her. The baby started crying during the testimony, and Becca bounced her while explaining how my sister had found out her induction date and work schedule. My sister's lawyer didn't cross-examine Becca at all, which made my sister slam her hands on the table. My husband testified the next afternoon about following my sister to the bar when she was supposed to be at a doctor appointment. He admitted punching her was wrong and he'd already completed his community service and anger management for it, but he explained he couldn't let an innocent baby get stolen, and he knew the police wouldn't believe him without proof. He showed the jury the security footage he'd saved of my sister stalking Becca for 2 months. My sister's lawyer asked if my husband enjoyed hitting a woman, and my husband said no, but he'd do it again to save a baby. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours, which our lawyer said was really fast for a case this serious. They came back with guilty verdicts on all 7 counts, including conspiracy to commit kidnapping and fraud over $10,000. My sister jumped up screaming that they were all idiots who didn't understand she was trying to help that baby have a better life. The bailiffs had to drag her out while she kept yelling about how Becca was trash who would ruin her child. 2 weeks later at sentencing, the judge gave my sister 18 years with the possibility of parole in 10 if she completed psychiatric treatment. My sister laughed and said she'd rather do the full 18 than pretend she was wrong. The judge said that was her choice, but she'd be transferred to a psychiatric correctional facility regardless. Within a month, my sister was moved to a facility 3 hours away where she had to attend daily therapy sessions. The doctors called us after her evaluation and said her personality disorder was severe and would take years of intensive treatment to even begin addressing. They said she still believed she'd done nothing wrong and talked about Becca's baby like it belonged to her. Mom and Dad started going to a grandparent support group at the community center for families affected by crime. Dad said it helped to hear other people's stories about their kids doing terrible things and how they learned to live with the shame. Mom became a regular speaker after 6 months, telling new members that loving your child doesn't mean excusing their crimes. They even started a fund to help young mothers like Becca afford childcare and baby supplies. My husband got hired coaching youth baseball and soccer at the rec center, using his experience from anger management to teach kids about controlling their emotions. He'd tell them about consequences and making better choices without giving specifics about what happened with my sister. The kids loved him because he understood getting mad, but taught them how to handle it without hurting anyone. 1 year passed, and we all drove to the community college for Becca's graduation ceremony, where she walked across the stage in her cap and gown. Cade held the baby up so she could see her mom getting her diploma, while Lila and Ramon cheered from the seats next to us. The dean announced Becca got accepted into the social work program starting in the fall, and she pumped her fist in the air. How did Becca manage to study for her GED with a baby crying at night? The way she balanced school and being a mom while dealing with trauma from someone trying to steal her baby makes me wonder what kept her going every single day. After the ceremony, Becca showed us her acceptance letter and class schedule while her daughter grabbed at the tassel on her cap. My husband and I looked at each other during the celebration and both knew we were finally ready to try for our own baby after all the therapy sessions. We'd spent months working through what happened and learning how to trust again and handle conflict without violence. That weekend, Dad sat at his desk for 6 hours writing and rewriting a letter to my sister in the psychiatric facility. He showed Mom the final version where he said he loved her but couldn't have contact until she took responsibility for what she did. His hands shook when he sealed the envelope, and Mom drove him to the post office because he couldn't see through his tears. The extended family started having small dinners again, but half the relatives still wouldn't come after everything that happened. Uncle hosted Thanksgiving with just 12 people instead of the usual 40, but everyone actually talked instead of pretending. My cousin brought her new boyfriend and nobody asked about my sister, which made the whole meal easier. 3 years into her sentence, the facility called to say my sister finally started participating in group therapy sessions. The doctor said she admitted for the first time that she needed help, and it was the first real progress they'd seen. She still wouldn't apologize or say she was wrong, but at least she stopped insisting Becca didn't deserve her baby. Meanwhile, Becca finished her first year of social work classes while working part-time at the women's shelter downtown. She started leading support groups for teen moms using her own story to help them see they could make it too. Her supervisor wrote a letter saying Becca was the best peer counselor they'd ever had because she really understood what the girls were going through. My husband and I found out I was pregnant right after Becca started her second year of college. We picked the name Hope before we even knew it was a girl because we needed something positive after everything dark. When she was born, the nurse asked about filling out the birth announcement for the newspaper, and we said no thanks. People at the grocery store would ask about Hope's aunt when they saw us, and we just said she was getting help she needed. We didn't explain or make excuses or tell the whole story anymore because it wasn't their their business. 5 years after that terrible baby shower, our family found its new normal with weekly dinners and monthly game nights. We had security cameras now, and Mom kept the doors locked even during the day, which we never did before. Dad started going to church again and found peace in helping with the food bank every Saturday morning. My husband coached 3 different youth teams and taught kids about making good choices when they got mad. I watched Hope playing at the park and made sure she knew about boundaries and speaking up when something felt wrong. We taught her that family means love, but also means holding people accountable when they hurt others. The psychiatrist called last month to say my sister was making slow progress, but would need years more treatment before any release. We listened to the update and thanked them for calling, but didn't visit or write back anymore. Our family learned to spot red flags we'd ignored before, like the little lies and the way she'd always played victim. We stopped making excuses for people's bad behavior and started calling things out when they didn't feel right. Mom joined a support group for parents of adult children with personality disorders and became their secretary after 6 months. She helped new members understand that mental illness doesn't excuse hurting innocent people or planning crimes. Dad wrote in his journal every night about forgiveness and boundaries and how to love someone from a distance. My brothers checked in weekly, and we all went to therapy separately to work through our own guilt and trauma. The extended family slowly came back together, but with new rules about money and trust and verification. Nobody gave cash gifts anymore, and everyone asked for receipts when someone needed help with expenses. Hope turned 3 last month and asked why she only had one aunt when her friends had more. We told her Aunt Sarah was sick and needed special doctors to help her get better. She accepted it the way kids do and went back to playing with her toys without asking more questions. Becca graduated with her social work degree and got hired full-time at the shelter, while Cade watched their daughter. They moved into a bigger apartment near the college and started saving for a house down payment. Lila and Ramon became like family to them and to us after everything they'd done to help. Our lives weren't perfect, but they were real and honest and free from the manipulation we'd lived with for so long. Thanks for sticking with me and wondering along all this time. It's definitely been a journey we've shared together. Until we meet again, take care. And if you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.
My husband's ex told the kids to treat me like a stranger, so I did the same, and they finally noticed what that meant. The text came through on a Tuesday afternoon while I was working in my home office. My stepdaughter Hazel, 14, had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was upstairs in the bathroom. I'd gone to grab coffee and saw the screen light up. The preview showed enough. Mom says we don't have to pretend anymore. Just be polite like she's Dad's roommate. I stood there holding my coffee mug, reading those words over and over. Each time felt like a small knife twisting. I'd been in their lives for 3 years, married to their dad Trevor for 2. In that time, I'd learned everything about these kids. I knew that Hazel needed her backpack placed by the front door the night before school, or she'd have a complete meltdown in the morning. That Owen, 11, only ate sandwiches cut diagonally, never straight across, because the diagonal cuts made them taste better somehow. That both kids needed their permission slips signed exactly 24 hours in advance, because their mom would inevitably forget until the morning they were due, creating absolute chaos. I knew that Hazel's anxiety spiked before every single math test, and she needed someone to quiz her repeatedly, using the same voice, the same patience, until the numbers finally clicked in her brain. That Owen had recurring nightmares about getting lost in crowded places and needed someone to check that all the doors and windows were locked before he could fall asleep. That Hazel secretly still slept with the stuffed elephant her grandmother had given her before she died, even though she'd never admit it to her friends. That Owen practiced his spelling words better when someone made them into a song. I knew which teammates' parents could be relied on for carpools, which teachers responded better to emails versus phone calls, which homework strategies worked, and which ones led to tears. I knew the name of Hazel's first crush, the one she'd never told her dad about. I knew that Owen was being quietly bullied by a kid in his class, but was too ashamed to tell anyone. I knew all of this because I'd paid attention, because I'd shown up, because I'd cared. Their biological mom, Vanessa, had been poisoning them against me slowly since the day Trevor and I started dating. Little comments dropped casually into conversations. How I was probably temporary. How real families don't include replacement. How their dad would eventually come to his senses and realize what he'd lost. She'd skip her weekends with them, then tell the kids I'd probably convinced their dad she shouldn't come around as much. She bought them new phones specifically to text them during our family dinners, asking what I was feeding them, if I was being nice to them, reminding them constantly that she was their real mother and I was just someone passing through. The phones were presented as gifts, generous presents from a loving mother. Really, they were surveillance devices, tiny screens that let her insert herself into every moment of our lives together. I'd tried everything imaginable to make this work. Family therapy sessions where the kids sat with crossed arms, barely speaking, clearly having been coached by their mother about what not to say. Long, exhausting conversations with Trevor about setting boundaries with his ex, most of which ended with him saying he couldn't control what she did on her time. Patient, age-appropriate discussions with the kids about blended families and how love expands rather than divides. How caring about me didn't mean betraying their mother. Nothing worked. Because how do you compete with biology? How do you fight against someone who has the ultimate trump card, who can say I'm your real mother and have those words carry the weight of blood and birth? When I saw that text Tuesday afternoon, something fundamental inside me just broke. Not dramatically, not with anger or tears, just a quiet snapping, like a bridge cable giving way after years of strain. Fine. I'd be the stranger they wanted. Wednesday morning started like every other morning. My alarm went off at 5:30. I made coffee, checked my work emails, started thinking about what I'd need to accomplish that day. Trevor left at 5 for a project site in Springfield, which meant he'd be gone for at least 12 hours. Hazel came downstairs at 6:15 in her volleyball uniform, hair still wet from her shower, backpack slung over one shoulder. She had that focused look she got before tournaments, already mentally preparing. Can you drive me early today? I need to be there by 6:45 for the tournament. Coach said if we're late, we don't play in the first rotation. I looked up from my laptop. You'll need to ask your dad about rides. She blinked at me, confused. Dad's not here? He left at 5 for that Springfield project, remember? Then I guess you'll need to figure out alternative transportation. She stood there in the kitchen doorway, completely still, like her brain was trying to process a language she didn't speak. What? You're seriously not taking me? I'm just a stranger. Your dad's roommate, according to your mom. Strangers don't rearrange their schedules for other people's kids. Her face cycled through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, because this wasn't how I behaved. Realization, as she understood I'd seen the text. Anger, because how dare I bring that up. Panic, because the tournament started in half an hour. Are you kidding me right now? This is insane. Not even a little bit. Not kidding at all. For 3 years, I'd been her backup for absolutely everything. Every forgotten assignment that needed to be retrieved from school because she'd left it in her locker. Every ride to practice or games when Trevor was working late or out of town. Every 11 p.m. emotional crisis about boys or friend drama or feeling overwhelmed by expectations. Every early morning emergency when plans changed and schedules shifted. I'd learned the schedules of all her teammates' parents, so I knew who could carpool in a pinch. I'd become the team mom by default, bringing orange slices and water bottles and organizing the end-of-season parties. This is insane. You're being petty. I'm being exactly what your mother suggested. Politely distant. She grabbed her phone and called Vanessa. Once, twice, 3 times. No answer. Called Trevor, who was already on the highway, 2 hours away and unable to turn back even if he wanted to. She tried 3 different teammates' parents. 1 didn't answer. 2 couldn't help on such short notice. Apologized profusely. Asked if everything was okay at home. She ended up missing the entire tournament. Her team lost without their starting setter. Her coach called Trevor during his lunch break, disappointed and concerned, asking what had happened to our family's usual reliability. Hazel spent the day in her room, crying and rage texting her mother about how I'd ruined everything, how I was a horrible person, how she'd been right all along about me. I felt terrible listening to her cry, but I also felt something else underneath the guilt. Relief, maybe. Or the grim satisfaction of finally letting them experience the natural consequences of their choices. Owen's science fair project was due Friday morning, first period. For 2 solid weeks, his half-constructed volcano had been sitting on our dining room table, gathering dust and judgment. Typically, I would have helped him every single evening, reminded him gently about the timeline, made sure he had all the supplies he needed, asked him questions about his hypothesis, taken him to the craft store when he realized he'd forgotten something essential. The night before it was due, I would have stayed up until midnight, or later, helping him paint the volcano the right colors, ensuring his baking soda to vinegar ratio was correct for a good eruption, printing his labels on nice cardstock instead of regular paper, helping him write his display board in neat handwriting that the teacher could actually read. Thursday evening at 8:30, with the project still barely started, with the volcano looking like a sad lump of newspaper and flour paste, Owen dragged himself downstairs to the kitchen where I was reading a novel at the table. Can you help me finish my volcano? It's due tomorrow, first period, and I haven't even painted it yet. I didn't look up from my book. That sounds like something a parent should help with, but you always help me with projects. You helped me with my diorama and my solar system and my biography poster. I always helped Owen, my stepson, but according to your mother's instructions, I'm just Dad's roommate. Roommates don't do school projects. That's not appropriate. His lower lip started trembling, that telltale sign that tears were coming. But Dad's on a conference call with the Japan office. He said it's going to be another 2 hours at least. Then you should have managed your time better. Asked one of your actual parents for help earlier in the week. 2 weeks is plenty of time. I'll get a 0. Mrs. Patterson doesn't accept late work ever. Not even with a doctor's note. That's unfortunate. Maybe next time you'll plan ahead. Real tears started rolling down his cheeks now, dripping onto his shirt. The same tears that had manipulated me for 3 years into fixing every problem, solving every crisis, being the safety net for poor planning and last-minute panic. Please. I'm sorry about the text. I'm sorry about what Mom said. I'm not doing this because I'm angry, Owen. I'm doing this because your mother is right. I'm not your parent. Your parents should be handling your education and your projects. I've been overstepping. This is better for everyone. He cried harder, his whole body shaking with it. Eventually, he dragged the pathetic, half-finished volcano back upstairs to his room. I could hear him trying to work on it. Lots of frustrated sounds. Something crashed, probably paint. More crying. The sound of tape being ripped. More frustrated noises. Trevor finally finished his conference call around 11 p.m. and went upstairs to check on Owen. By then, it was far too late. The volcano looked like a sad, lumpy pile of papier-mâché with uneven paint drips running down the sides. Owen had printed his labels on regular paper in a font that was way too small to read from any distance. The display board was covered in scribbled-out mistakes. The whole thing was a disaster. I heard Trevor through the ceiling trying to salvage it, his patient dad voice explaining that they'd do their best. Owen crying that it wasn't good enough, that everyone else would have better projects, that his teacher was going to be so disappointed. Friday afternoon, Owen came home from school with red eyes and a graded rubric. 35%. Failed the entire assignment. His teacher had written a note at the bottom. This is well below your normal standard, Owen. What happened? You usually have such wonderful projects. When Vanessa found out later that evening, She sent Trevor a furious string of texts. I wasn't supposed to see them, but he showed me, his jaw tight with anger. The texts called me vindictive, said I was sabotaging the kids' education out of spite, said I was supposed to be helping them, not punishing them for having a real mother who actually cared about their well-being. Said Trevor needed to get his wife under control before she did permanent damage. Trevor was confused. He couldn't understand why I hadn't just helped Owen like I normally did, why I'd let an 11-year-old fail when I could have prevented it with just a few hours of my time. That's when I showed him the text from Vanessa to Hazel. He read it 3 times, his expression darkening with each pass. She told them to treat you like a stranger? Like a roommate? Those were the specific words. Yes. And you decided to just stop helping them completely? Just like that? I decided to respect their mother's wishes. She's right, you know. I have been overstepping for years. They have 2 biological parents. Those parents should be handling their needs. I'm not their mother. I never will be. So I'm correcting my behavior. That's not what I want. That's not what we agreed on when we got married. What we agreed on doesn't matter if the kids don't want me in that role. Vanessa is their mother. If she thinks my involvement is inappropriate, then I need to step back. It's actually better this way. Clearer boundaries, less confusion. He didn't agree that it was better, but he couldn't exactly argue with the logic. His ex-wife had set a boundary. I was respecting it. That should have been a good thing, right? The following week brought Hazel's 15th birthday. In previous years, I'd spent literal weeks planning. I'd figure out her current favorite dinner, which changed annually as her tastes evolved. I'd make her cake from scratch, from recipes I'd perfected, because she had specific preferences about frosting to cake ratios and texture and flavor combinations that store-bought cakes never got right. I'd hunt for gifts she'd actually love, because I paid attention to every single offhand comment she made about things she wanted or needed or admired. Last year, she'd mentioned exactly once, in passing, that she thought the handmade jewelry her friend wore was pretty. I'd tracked down the artist's Etsy shop, commissioned a custom necklace in Hazel's favorite colors, had it wrapped professionally. She'd cried happy tears when she opened it and wore it every single day for 6 months straight. This year, I did absolutely nothing. Day of her birthday, she came home from school and waited by the front door like she always did on special occasions. She stood there with her backpack, looking toward the kitchen expectantly. I was in the living room reading. Aren't we going to go get my cake? From that bakery downtown that does the raspberry filling I like? I turned a page. I'm sure your mom will handle that. Mom's working late. She texted earlier that you'd take care of the birthday stuff like you always do. Did she? I still didn't look up from my book. Well, I'm just your dad's wife. Birthday celebrations are a parent job. I'm certain your mother will figure something out. Confusion spread across her face slowly, like ink in water. But you always do my birthday. You're the one who makes it special. I used to overstep my role. I'm correcting that now. Your parents should be handling milestone celebrations. This is because of that stupid text, isn't it? Because of what Mom said? Finally, I looked at her directly. This is because your mother is absolutely right. I'm not your parent. I never will be. Biology matters. Her role matters. Mine doesn't. So from now on, your actual parents will handle parent responsibilities. Her birthday dinner that night was lukewarm pizza that Trevor grabbed on his way home from work because he'd forgotten it was her birthday until 4 p.m. No special meal. No homemade cake with the raspberry filling. No carefully chosen gifts wrapped in the specific paper she loved. Just a card with $100 cash inside that Vanessa dropped off 3 days late because she'd forgotten until Hazel reminded her. I heard Hazel crying in her room that night around 10. The sound was muffled, like she had her face buried in her pillow, trying not to be heard. Every single instinct I had screamed at me to go to her, to knock on her door, to sit on her bed and stroke her hair and tell her I was sorry, to explain that I was hurt, but I still loved her, to fix this like I'd fixed everything else for 3 years. But I stayed in my bedroom with the door closed, reading my book, forcing myself not to move. If I went to her now, nothing would change. She'd learn that I'd always come running, even when I'd been pushed away. She'd learn that my boundaries meant nothing. Trevor came into our bedroom around 11. He sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his face with both hands in that way he did when he was stressed. You're really doing this. I am. She's devastated in there. She'll recover. Plenty of kids have birthdays without elaborate celebrations. That's not the point, and you know it. The point is that her mother set a boundary, and I'm respecting it. He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know how to fix this. There's nothing to fix. This is how it should have been from the beginning. You have 2 kids. You and Vanessa are their parents. I'm your wife. Those are separate roles that shouldn't have gotten confused. By week 3, things had deteriorated significantly throughout the entire household. Owen came down with a stomach bug on a Wednesday. Woke up at 3 a.m. vomiting. Normally, I would have been the one to handle it automatically. I worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, so my schedule was completely flexible. Trevor worked in commercial construction management with strict site visit schedules and client meetings that couldn't easily be rescheduled. For 3 years, I'd been the default sick day parent without question. But when Owen started throwing up at 3 a.m., I woke Trevor instead of getting up myself. Owen's sick. Sounds like he's vomiting. You'll need to call in tomorrow. Trevor, barely conscious, said, "Can't you just handle it? You're already home. I have that critical client meeting at 8. I'm not his parent. This is your responsibility. Call your boss." He missed the critical client meeting. The client was understanding, but barely. Told Trevor's supervisor that maybe they needed someone more reliable. Trevor spent the entire day exhausted, cleaning up vomit every hour, trying to keep Owen hydrated with small sips of water, falling behind on urgent emails and phone calls. Meanwhile, I worked in my office with the door closed, pretending I couldn't hear Owen calling for me every hour. "Why won't she come?" I heard Owen ask his dad at one point through the wall. The sound made my chest hurt. "She's working, buddy, but she always takes care of me when I'm sick. She makes that ginger tea that settles my stomach, and she plays those audiobooks with the funny voices that make me forget I feel bad." I know. Things are just different right now. Because of what Mom said? Because of that text? Trevor didn't answer that question. Just changed the subject to whether Owen could keep down some crackers. Hazel's math anxiety spiraled completely out of control. She had a major test scheduled for Thursday on quadratic equations. Usually, I'd spend Tuesday and Wednesday evenings quizzing her for hours, walking her through practice problems using the specific techniques and explanations that helped her understand, sitting with her until her hands stopped shaking and her breathing evened out. This time, when she asked for help Tuesday evening, I told her to watch Khan Academy videos, but I don't understand how they explain it. You explain it better. You make it make sense. Your parents can help you. Or they can hire a tutor if needed. She failed the test. Got a 58, her first failing grade in math ever, after maintaining a solid B+ average with my help. She came home Thursday afternoon sobbing, threw her backpack across the kitchen so hard it hit the wall, and screamed that she hated me, that I was cruel and vindictive and she wished I'd never married her dad. Good. It's easier to hate a stranger than someone you depend on. She ran upstairs and slammed her door so hard the pictures in the hallway rattled. That night, I overheard Trevor on the phone with Vanessa through our bedroom wall. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "You need to undo this. Call the kids right now and tell them you were wrong. That you didn't mean it." Vanessa's voice came through the speaker, sharp and defensive. "I wasn't wrong. She's not their mother. She needs to remember her place." Her place? Her place has been keeping our kids' lives running smoothly for 3 years, while you skip weekends and forget pickups and can't be bothered to show up. Don't you dare blame me for having to work. I'm supporting myself without any help from anyone. I have to work too. So does she. But somehow she made it work for 3 years. She learned everything about them, their schedules, their fears, their favorite foods, their triggers, how to calm them down, what makes them feel safe. She's been more present than you have. Silence on the other end for several seconds. Then, you chose her over your own children. I chose someone who actually shows up, who doesn't use our kids as weapons, who doesn't send manipulative texts designed to hurt someone who's been nothing but good to them. She hung up on him. Week 4 was when things crossed from difficult into actually dangerous. Hazel had a severe allergic reaction to something at lunch on Monday. Turned out one of her friends had brought in homemade cookies that weren't properly labeled. Within 20 minutes of eating one, Hazel's throat started swelling. The school nurse called me first because I was listed as the primary emergency contact. For 3 years, I'd been the one who handled all medical emergencies because I was available immediately and close to the school. When my phone rang and I saw the school's number, my stomach dropped. But I didn't answer. They called Trevor next. He was 45 minutes away at a major job site. Couldn't leave immediately, even in an emergency. They called Vanessa. She was in court, phone turned off, completely unreachable. They called me again. I let it ring through to voicemail. The school nurse's voice on the message was stressed and urgent. "This is Carol from Hillside Middle School. Hazel's having an allergic reaction. We've administered her EpiPen, but we need a parent here immediately to make medical decisions and possibly transport to the ER. She's stable but scared and asking for you specifically. Please call back as soon as you get this." I sat at my desk, staring at my phone, hands physically shaking. This was too far. This was actual medical danger. This was a child who needed help, whose throat might be swelling shut, who was frightened and calling for me. But if I went running every single time there was a crisis, nothing would ever change. They'd learned that I was a completely reliable backup, and Vanessa would keep pulling this manipulative garbage. They needed to understand that actions have real consequences, that you can't systematically push someone away and still expect them to catch you every time you fall. I waited 20 minutes, long enough for Trevor to get the message and start driving back, long enough for Vanessa to eventually come out of court and see the 47 missed calls on her phone, long enough for Hazel to experience what it genuinely felt like when the person she'd depended on for years didn't show up. Then I drove to the school. When I walked into the nurse's office, Hazel was sitting on the cot, face splotchy and swollen from the reaction, eyes red from crying and the allergic response both. The moment she saw me, her entire face crumpled. "You didn't come. They called you first and you didn't come. Your dad is on his way. Should be here in about 10 minutes. I asked for you. They said they called you twice and you didn't answer." The nurse looked at me with obvious confusion and a bit of judgment in her eyes. She knew me. She'd seen me there for every scraped knee, every fever, every upset stomach, every accident for 3 solid years. She'd watched me comfort Hazel through panic attacks and hold ice packs on Owen's baseball injuries and sit through concussion protocols. I'm just step-parent. Her actual parents should handle medical emergencies. I stayed in the office, silent, not comforting Hazel, not holding her hand, not doing any of the things I would have done automatically before. Just waited in the uncomfortable plastic chair until Trevor burst through the door 15 minutes later, frantic and terrified. "Is she okay? What happened? Why didn't you come immediately when they called?" I looked at him evenly. "You're her father. Medical emergencies are a parent responsibility. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Then he turned all his attention to Hazel, checking her over, talking to the nurse about protocols and next steps, and whether they needed to go to the ER for observation. I left while they were still discussing it. That evening, Trevor and I had our worst fight yet. He didn't even wait until the kids were asleep, just followed me into our bedroom and closed the door hard. She could have died. Do you understand that? Her throat could have closed completely. She had her EpiPen. The nurse was there. She was fine. She was terrified. She was crying for you and you just didn't show up. You made a conscious choice to let a child suffer. Her mother told her I was a stranger. Strangers don't leave work for other people's medical emergencies. Stop saying that. Stop using that text as an excuse to punish children for their mother's behavior. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm establishing appropriate boundaries that should have existed from the beginning. Boundaries? You're traumatizing them. You're teaching them that love is conditional and can be withdrawn as punishment. They were already being traumatized by having someone in their life their mother told them to reject, by being forced to choose between caring about me and being loyal to her. I'm removing that confusion. Now their family structure is clear. You're their dad. Vanessa's their mom. I'm your wife. Separate roles. That's not how this family works. That's not what we built together. It's exactly how this family works when one parent is actively sabotaging the other, when one parent uses children as weapons, when one parent makes it impossible for anyone else to succeed. His face was red with anger. You're no better than she is right now. You're using them to hurt her. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. He grabbed his pillow and slept in the guest room that night, and the next 3 nights after that. By week 5, I'd systematically stopped doing anything and everything that could be considered even remotely parental in nature. No cooking family meals. I made dinner for Trevor and myself. The kids could make themselves sandwiches or cereal or order food with their mom's credit card if she'd given them one. Not my responsibility. No laundry, except my own. Their clothes piled up in their rooms until they ran out of clean uniforms and had to wear dirty ones or figure out the washing machine themselves. No driving anywhere except my own errands. If they needed to get somewhere, they could take the bus or bike or ask their actual parents. No helping with homework, projects, problems, or studying. They had teachers and parents for that. No attending school events, games, performances, or parent-teacher conferences. Those were for parents. No managing their schedules or activities or keeping track of what they needed to be where and when. No gift buying for their friends' birthdays. No signing permission slips. No packing lunches. No checking their backpacks. No reminding them about anything. The house fell into complete and total chaos. Owen missed soccer practice 3 times in 1 week because nobody drove him. He got benched for the next game as punishment. Came home crying about it, but I was working in my office with headphones on. Hazel ran out of clean volleyball uniforms and had to wear her dirty practice jersey to an actual game. Her teammates noticed and made comments. She came home humiliated, locked herself in her room. Both kids were surviving on cereal, peanut butter sandwiches, and whatever fast food Trevor grabbed on his way home from work, which was usually around 8 p.m. Their grades were slipping across every subject. They were missing assignments left and right because nobody was helping them stay organized. They looked exhausted and disheveled and lost. And they were absolutely furious with me. Hazel stopped speaking to me entirely unless absolutely necessary. Would walk past me in the hallway like I was invisible. Would leave rooms when I entered them. Would eat her cereal standing at the counter rather than sit at the table if I was there. Owen tried a different tactic. Would look at me with these big, sad, manipulative eyes. Would sigh dramatically when I walked by. Would mention loudly to Trevor that he wished someone cared enough to help him. When that didn't work, he joined Hazel in the silent treatment. Meanwhile, Vanessa was getting increasingly frantic calls from the school about the kids' declining performance and appearance. Teachers were concerned. The counselor wanted a meeting. Vanessa blamed me for everything. Sent Trevor long, detailed texts about my cruelty and manipulation, threatened to take him back to court for custody modifications because I was creating an unsafe and neglectful environment for the children. Good, I told Trevor when he showed me the texts. Let her have full custody. Let her handle literally everything herself for once. See how long she lasts before she realizes how much work it actually is. You don't mean that. I absolutely do mean it. I'm tired. I've been trying for 3 years to love kids who've been told not to love me back. I'm done being the person who does all the work and gets none of the appreciation. I'm done being convenient. Week 6 brought the breaking point for everyone. It was a Friday. Trevor had left Wednesday for a 3-day industry conference 2 states away. Couldn't get out of it because he was presenting. Vanessa was supposed to take the kids for the weekend, but she canceled last minute Friday morning. Some work emergency that sounded completely made up when she explained it in her text. Something about a brief that had to be filed and she was the only one who could do it. So the kids were stuck with me for 3 days straight. Neither of them spoke to me. They holed up in their rooms all Friday afternoon and evening. I worked in my office and left them completely alone. Didn't check on them. Didn't offer to make dinner. Didn't do anything. Friday night, they ordered pizza using Trevor's credit card that they'd memorized. Ate it in Owen's room while watching something on his laptop. Saturday morning, they made themselves breakfast. Cereal and toast from what I could hear. Made themselves lunch around noon. I worked through the morning and afternoon, completely ignoring them. Saturday afternoon around 2, Owen's phone lit up with a text. His best friend Dylan was having a last-minute birthday party at the trampoline park across town, starting in just over an hour at 3:30. The invitation said Dylan's mom could pick up a few kids, but not everyone. Some parents would need to drop off. Owen appeared in my office doorway around 2:15, shifting his weight nervously from foot to foot. Can you drive me to Dylan's party? It starts at 3:30. I didn't look up from my computer screen. No, please. Everyone from class is going. I can't miss Dylan's birthday. He's my best friend. Figure out another ride. There is no other ride. Dylan's mom can't pick me up. She already has too many kids in her car. Dad's at his conference. Mom's not answering her phone. That's unfortunate. His face started getting red. His breathing quickened. Why are you doing this? Why are you being so mean? I'm just following your mother's instructions. I'm treating you the way she suggested. I don't care what Mom said anymore. I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want? Just please take me to the party. You don't mean that apology. You just want something from me right now? I do mean it. I'm really sorry. I miss when you were nice to me. I miss when you helped me with stuff and played games with me and made things fun. Something in his voice almost broke through my resolve. Almost made me cave. But I remembered that text message. The casual cruelty of it. The deliberate instruction to treat me like I didn't matter. Like I was nothing. I'm in the middle of work. Not available for driving today. He stared at me for another few seconds, then ran back upstairs. I heard his door slam. Heard him crying. Heard Hazel go into his room to comfort him. Their voices low through the wall. 20 minutes later, Hazel appeared in my office doorway. Her face was blotchy and red from crying too, though whether from her own tears or sympathy for her brother, I couldn't tell. He's up there sobbing because he's missing his best friend's birthday party. Does that make you happy? Is this what you wanted? I'm neutral about it? How can you be so cold? You used to actually care about us. You used to be nice. You used to be someone I could talk to. I used to overstep boundaries. I'm correcting that now. This isn't about boundaries. You're punishing us because your feelings got hurt. My feelings don't matter. What matters is respecting your mother's parental role. My mother is barely around. She works all the time and cancels on us constantly and forgets important stuff. Then maybe you should tell her that. I have told her that. She doesn't listen. She just keeps saying you're trying to replace her and that we need to stay loyal to our real family. And you believed her. Silence stretched between us. You believed her, I repeated. For 3 years, I showed up for you every single day. I learned everything about you. I adjusted my entire life around your needs. I loved you. And one text from her was all it took for you to decide I was the enemy. That's not fair. She's our mom. We have to listen to her. You're right. She's your mom. And I'm not. I never will be. So from now on, she can handle all the mom jobs. I'm finished trying to be something you don't actually want me to be. Hazel's face crumpled. I do want you to be that. I got confused. She made me feel guilty for liking you. You weren't confused. You made a choice. You chose to believe her. You chose to treat me like I don't matter. That's fine. But choices have consequences. Actions have consequences. You don't get to have it both ways. So you're going to treat us like this forever? You're just going to stop caring about us completely? I'm going to treat you exactly how your mother suggested. Politely distant. Like your dad's roommate who shares space with you but has no real role in your life. Even when we're sorry? Even when we realize we were wrong? Words are easy. Anyone can say sorry when they want something. You weren't sorry last week. You weren't sorry when I wasn't taking you places and helping with projects. You're only sorry now because your brother is missing something important and you're realizing how much you actually relied on me. She left my office. I heard her go back upstairs to Owen's room. Heard them talking in low voices. More crying. Around 6 that evening, my phone rang. Dylan's mother. Hi there. I'm calling about Owen. He was supposed to be at the party today, but he never showed up. Dylan's been so disappointed. They're best friends. Is everything all right? He's fine. Just couldn't make it today. Oh no. Dylan's been upset about it all afternoon. I would have been happy to pick Owen up if transportation was an issue. I could have fit one more in the car if someone had called. That's very kind of you, but it's all handled. Well, Dylan really wanted Owen there. They've been planning this for weeks. Do you think Owen might be able to come over tomorrow instead for a small celebration? Just the two of them? You'd have to discuss that with his father. He's at a conference until Sunday evening, but you can try his cell. Oh, okay then. I'll do that. I hope everything's all right with your family. After I hung up, I felt physically sick. Not because of what I'd done, but because I'd realized something important. The kids weren't the only casualties of Vanessa's poison. I was losing myself too, becoming cold and rigid and cruel in response to her manipulation, hurting children to make a point to their mother, turning into exactly the kind of person I'd never wanted to be. That evening, around 8, Hazel and Owen emerged from upstairs together. They looked nervous and sad and younger than their actual ages. They sat on the couch across from my reading chair, close together like they were supporting each other. We need to talk to you, Hazel said quietly. I closed my book and waited. Owen's voice was small and shaky. We talked to Mom today, told her everything that's been happening, all of it. And Hazel took over. She said we misunderstood her text, that she didn't mean for us to treat you badly. She just meant we didn't have to call you Mom if we didn't want to. That we could keep our relationship with her separate from our relationship with you. That's a very convenient reinterpretation after the fact. Hazel winced. I know, but she also said some other stuff. About how she's been struggling with you being in our lives, how it makes her feel like she's being replaced. How she's scared we'll love you more than her because you're around more and you do more stuff with us. So she decided to make absolutely sure you didn't love me at all. Yeah, Hazel's voice was barely audible. I think that's exactly what she did. We sat in silence for a long moment. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen, could hear a car driving past outside, could hear my own heartbeat. Owen spoke next, his words tumbling out fast like he'd rehearsed them. We've been really, really stupid. You've been taking care of us forever and we treated you like you didn't matter because Mom made us feel guilty for liking you. But you do matter. You matter a lot. You're not stupid. You're kids stuck in an impossible situation that adults created. We don't want you to be distant anymore, Hazel said. We want things to go back to how they were before. I looked at both of them for a long moment, seeing the hope and fear mixed in their expressions. I can't do that. Their faces fell simultaneously, mirror images of disappointment. I can't go back to how things were before because how things were before wasn't sustainable or healthy. I was drowning. I was doing absolutely everything for you while your mother actively undermined me, and your dad stayed mostly oblivious. I was exhausted and unappreciated and treated like I was temporary, like I didn't really matter, like I could be dismissed whenever it was convenient. We appreciate you now, Owen said quickly. We really do. We see how much you were doing. Now you appreciate me. Now you see it. Because you've experienced what life looks like without me handling everything. But the second things get comfortable again, we'll end up right back where we started. Your mom will get jealous again. She'll say something that makes you feel guilty. You'll pull away from me, and I'll be left hurt and confused all over again. I can't do that cycle anymore. So what do we do? Hazel asked. How do we fix this? You talk to your mother. Both of you. Together. You tell her that you love her and appreciate her, but that you also care about me. You tell her that me being in your life doesn't erase her or replace her. You set boundaries with her about the kind of things she says about me and your home here, and you actually hold those boundaries even when it's uncomfortable. She's not going to like that. She doesn't have to like it. But if she genuinely loves you, she'll respect it. She'll put your needs ahead of her insecurities. And then what? Owen asked. After we talk to her, then we all go to family therapy. All 5 of us, if your mother will agree. And we figure out how to build something sustainable. Not me doing everything while everyone else coasts. Not me doing nothing while you all suffer. Something in the middle where everyone contributes and everyone's role is clear and everyone feels valued. What if Mom won't come to therapy? Then we do it without her and figure out what this family looks like with healthy boundaries. But the invitation stays open for her. They both nodded slowly, processing everything. Can I ask you something? Hazel said after a minute. Sure. Do you still love us? After everything we did? After how we treated you? I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. I never stopped loving you. I just stopped showing it in ways that were hurting me, and I'm not going to apologize for protecting myself. Love without boundaries isn't healthy. Love without reciprocity isn't sustainable. I had to step back before I started resenting you because that would have been worse for everyone. We're really, truly sorry, Owen said, fresh tears streaming down his face. For all of it. For believing Mom. For treating you like you didn't matter. For taking advantage of how much you did for us. I know you are. I can see that you mean it now. Can we hug you? I hesitated for just a second, then nodded. They both rushed over and wrapped their arms around me from either side. I hugged them back, feeling 3 years of tension and hurt and love all pressing against my chest at once. I'm sorry I didn't take you to the party, I whispered to Owen. I'm sorry I let Mom make me treat you bad, he whispered back through his tears. I'm sorry I failed my math test instead of asking you for help, Hazel added. I'm sorry I missed my tournament and blamed you. I'm sorry for all of it. We stayed like that for several minutes, just holding each other. When Trevor came home Sunday evening from his conference, exhausted and dragging his suitcase, he found the 3 of us in the kitchen making dinner together. Not because I'd taken over cooking duty again, but because we were all working together, all contributing. Owen was attempting to cut vegetables, doing it badly but trying his best. Hazel was watching garlic bread in the oven, had already burned the first batch. I was trying to save a pasta sauce that had gotten way too salty because I'd measured wrong. We were laughing at our mistakes and it was messy and chaotic and nothing like the smooth, efficient machine I'd been running for 3 years. Trevor stood in the doorway with his suitcase, completely confused. What's happening here? We're making dinner, Hazel said, grinning despite the smoke detector that had gone off twice. All of us together. We're really bad at it, Owen added cheerfully, holding up a carrot he'd cut into weird diagonal chunks. Trevor looked at me with questions in his eyes. We had some conversations this weekend. We're trying something different. Different how? Different like everyone actually participates? Different like I'm not the only one holding everything together. Different like we're building something sustainable instead of something dependent entirely on me. That night, after the kids went to bed, after we'd eaten our mediocre pasta and laughed about our terrible cooking skills, I told Trevor everything. The full extent of the conversations I'd had with Hazel and Owen, the plan going forward, the boundaries that needed to be established and maintained, the therapy that needed to happen, the ways things absolutely could not go back to how they were before. I can't be everything to everyone anymore, I said. I can't be the primary parent while Vanessa gets to swoop in and play fun mom when she feels like it, and also poison them against me. I can't carry this family alone while everyone else just benefits from my labor. You shouldn't have to carry it alone. I should have seen what was happening. I should have protected you from her. You should have, but you didn't. So now we need to build something better. The kids need to do more for themselves, need to learn actual life skills and responsibility. You need to take on more of the parenting duties, need to be present for their daily needs instead of just the fun stuff. Vanessa needs to be genuinely present when she has them, and stop with the manipulation and toxicity. And I need to be allowed to be a human being with limits instead of an endless well of service. What if Vanessa won't change? What if she keeps doing what she's been doing? Then the kids will see clearly who actually shows up consistently and who doesn't. They'll see who respects them enough to be honest and who manipulates them. They'll make their own choices about who they trust. But I can't control her. I can only control myself. The following Monday, we scheduled a family meeting with Vanessa. She didn't want to come, made excuses about work and scheduling conflicts. But Trevor made it absolutely clear it wasn't optional if she wanted to maintain her custody arrangement without court involvement. That got her attention. She arrived at our house at 6 p.m., arms crossed defensively, barely making eye contact with anyone, sat on the chair farthest from me like I was contagious. Hazel spoke first, her voice shaking but determined. "Mom, we need to talk about the text you sent us. About treating her like Dad's roommate." Vanessa's expression was immediately defensive. "I already explained that. You misunderstood what I meant." "No," Hazel said more firmly than I'd ever heard her speak to her mother. "I don't think we misunderstood. I think you told us to push her away because you were jealous. And it almost ruined everything." Vanessa's face flushed red. "I'm your mother. I have a right to what?" Owen interrupted, his voice stronger than usual. "To make us feel guilty for caring about someone? To make us choose between you and her when we shouldn't have to choose at all? That's not what I was doing." "That's exactly what you were doing," Trevor said firmly. "And it stops right now. Today. You can't tell me how to parent my children. I can tell you that if you keep poisoning them against my wife, if you keep using them as weapons in whatever battle you think you're fighting, I will take you back to court. Not for more custody. For documented parental alienation with evidence." The room went completely silent. Vanessa looked at me directly for the first time since arriving, her expression mixing anger and something that might have been shame. "You really turned them all against me." "I didn't have to turn anyone against you," I said quietly. "You did that yourself by prioritizing your insecurities over their well-being." She stood up abruptly, grabbed her purse from the floor. "I'm not sitting here and being attacked by all of you." "Mom," Hazel said urgently, "please don't leave. Please just listen. Call me when you're all ready to apologize for being disrespectful." She walked out. We heard her car start in the driveway, heard her drive away. The four of us sat in the living room for several minutes, processing what had just happened. The kids looked devastated. Trevor looked resigned. I just felt tired. "Well," Trevor said eventually, "that went about as well as I expected it to go." "She'll come around," Hazel said, but her voice was uncertain. "She has to, right? Maybe. Or maybe she won't. Either way, we move forward." 3 weeks passed. Vanessa still hadn't called the kids, hadn't answered their calls to her. The silent treatment from their mother hurt them badly, but it also clarified things in a way words never could have. In those 3 weeks, things changed gradually in our household. The kids started doing their own laundry without being asked, started managing their homework independently, started figuring out their own transportation sometimes. Trevor started taking mornings off work when the kids needed something, started being more present for their daily struggles instead of just the big moments. I found a sustainable middle ground. I helped when they asked and when I had the capacity. But I also said no sometimes without guilt. I prioritized my own work and needs. I let them fail occasionally when failing was the best teacher. I was caring but boundaried, present but not drowning. It wasn't perfect. We still had difficult days. Hazel still struggled with math anxiety. Owen still forgot things. Trevor still worked too much sometimes. But it was honest. It was sustainable. It was built on mutual respect instead of endless obligation. One evening about a month after everything had changed, Hazel came into my office while I was working. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." I saved my work and turned my chair to face her. "Are you glad this all happened? Like, do you think all the bad stuff made things better in the end?" I thought about it carefully. "I'm not glad you got hurt. I'm not glad things had to get so terrible before they could improve. But I am glad we all learned something true about ourselves and each other, something we needed to learn." "What did you learn?" "That I can't pour from an empty cup. That love without boundaries isn't actually healthy love. That sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people experience the consequences of their choices. That protecting yourself isn't selfish. That you can love people and still require them to treat you with respect." She nodded slowly, processing. "I learned that just because someone is related to me doesn't mean I have to accept their toxic behavior. And that sometimes people who love you will walk away to protect themselves. And that doesn't mean they stopped loving you. That's very wise for a 15-year-old. I learned it from watching you these past few weeks. After she left my office, I sat thinking about how we'd all been trapped in a pattern that wasn't working for anyone. How sometimes the most loving thing you can actually do is refuse to participate in your own mistreatment. How children are far more resilient than we think when we give them space to be. Vanessa eventually came around, 6 weeks after the family meeting. Called and apologized to the kids, though notably not to me. Started showing up more consistently for her weekends. Stopped sending manipulative texts, or at least the kids stopped telling me about them. We weren't friendly, but we were functionally coexisting. My husband's ex told the kids to treat me like a stranger, so I did the same to them. And in that painful, empty space that created, we all finally learned what it actually meant to build something real and sustainable, instead of something dependent on one person's endless sacrifice.
Every time we do a split-the-bill dinner, Valerie always finds a way to skip out. After eating her fill, she either plays dead, or suddenly remembers she has something urgent to do. If anyone asks her for her share, she gives them a sideways look. Everybody ate, so why should I pay more? We all breathe the air too. Why don't you charge for that? Because she has connections higher up. Most people just swallow their frustration. Since I was new, I volunteered to organize a company dinner, and suggested we split the cost. Val zeroed in on this, ate, and then tried to avoid paying. Then she pretended to have a seizure to get out of it, thinking I'd let it go. I smiled. She had no idea I'm not one to back down. What is this? It's terrible. Val grimaced, forcing down another bite. It's something my mom spent weeks making just so she could send it to me, Megan replied, staring at the empty wrappers in front of Val in shock. Val made a sound of disdain, spitting out what was left. Didn't you say I could eat it? Megan's face reddened, and her eyes filled with tears. I offered you one to try, not the whole batch. Why would you eat all of it? She couldn't hold back anymore and started crying. Val raised a brow dismissively. Really, it's just a little food. I'll pay you back next time, and honestly it wasn't even that good. I can't believe you're crying. People will think I bullied you or something. Just as I set my laptop down, I caught the end of their argument. Curious, I asked the person next to me, what's going on? Why is she crying so hard? My colleague rolled her eyes at Val before answering. You're new, so you wouldn't know, but Val's always pulling stunts to get free stuff. We all try to steer clear of her. Megan's new too. She just moved here from New Mexico. It's a big deal for her to get her favorite hometown snacks. Her mom even went out of her way to make them and send them here. She tried to be nice and let Val try some, and Val went and ate the whole lot and then criticized her mom's cooking. Another colleague, clearly annoyed, joined in. Next time, she says. Val never pays anyone back. If she's not mooching, she's cutting corners. Megan kept crying as Val yelled over her. You're crying over a few snacks? Seriously, you look like some bumpkin from nowhere. Couldn't even handle more than 3 dishes at a real meal. Megan went silent, shocked into stillness by Val's outburst, her cheeks still wet. I frowned. Was this really okay? I wanted to step in, but then Director Collins called, asking me to bring some paperwork upstairs. By the time I came back down, they'd all dispersed. At lunch, a guy mentioned, I'm ordering takeout. I have a discount code if anyone wants to join. He tapped my desk and asked politely, Hey, I noticed you haven't had lunch yet. Want me to add something for you? I looked up from my work. Sure, thanks. Just let me know how much, and I'll Venmo you. He smiled, saying we'd figure it out after he used the code. Val bustled over, her face stretching into a big smile. Jamie, I haven't eaten either. Could you order me something? Jamie didn't respond and just walked away. Val huffed. Humph. What a miser. Someone nearby teased. Val, how many times have you borrowed lunch from Jamie? Have you ever actually paid him back? Oh, get over it. I carry a Chanel bag. Do you think I'd cheat him out of some takeout? Val huffed, returning to her desk before standing up again and calling after Jamie. Come on, order me one more time. I swear, once I owe you a full 1,000, I'll pay you back. Jamie didn't even look back. When the food arrived, everyone collected their orders, but one was left unclaimed. Val grabbed it while no one was watching and started eating. When Jamie came back, he slammed a contract onto her desk. You took my food without asking? Val chuckled. I noticed it was just sitting there, and I didn't want it to go to waste. Taking something without permission is stealing. This cost $20. Venmo me. Val's eyes widened. What proof do you have that it was yours? Besides, you used a discount code, it probably covered it. You didn't even pay for it yourself, so what right do you have to charge me? Her twisted logic left Jamie speechless. Val, do you have no shame? Is it a matter of life or death for you to freeload every day? Val rolled her eyes, sneering. I wouldn't even care if you died, Jamie. She looked him up and down with disdain. You don't even have $200 on you, don't talk to me. You're bad luck. Jamie was ready to hit her, but she slammed her hand on the desk. Do you even know who I am? I've got people in high places. Val had been hired by the HR director at the Manhattan headquarters. Our branch office only had project managers, so as long as she didn't mess up her work, no one here could do much about her. I couldn't take it anymore, so I smiled sweetly. I bet that Chanel bag's a knockoff. Val whipped around. What did you just say? I shrugged. You can't even fork over $20. I doubt you can afford real Chanel. She grabbed her bag and stormed over. Are you blind? Look at the details, no fake would be this good. I took a step back. Oh, I get it. Everyone must have chipped in to get it for you. Shut up. Nobody's that stupid. I pointed at her half-finished food.